Diablo 4, Overwatch 2, and a StarCraft first-person shooter. One of these has been cancelled, but the other two will be revealed at BlizzCon 2019. Can you guess which ones? Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include new big leaks coming out of Blizzard, some great news for RPG fans, some action RPG news, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the video description, but right before we jump ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub-notification bell to be alerted of new Saturday episodes. In our first bit of news, we got a new teaser trailer for Doom Eternal posted on Twitter. As always, links can be found in the video description, and we're expecting a full reveal by Bethesda at E3, live on June 9th. And if there's one thing that I'm gleaning from this video, it's that either we're going to be fighting angels or some form of nobility in hell. There certainly seems to be a new aesthetic that suggests something higher. But sound off with your interpretations. Speaking of angels and demons and heaven and hell and all that, we have some Darksiders news this week. We saw the release of the cinematic teaser trailer for Darksiders Genesis, an upcoming action RPG spin-off in the Darksiders franchise. And it looks like we're getting our first look at the fourth horseman, Strife. Now, this is coming from THQ Nordic and seems to be releasing on Xbox One, PS4, Switch, and Steam. While the teaser heavily features Strife, we definitely see in one clip War playing alongside Strife, suggesting that this will be co-op, and my theory would be up to 4-player co-op in which you can control all 4 horsemen. More will be revealed at E3. And on to a bombshell reveal this week, Baldur's Gate 3. Definitely check out the uncut teaser trailer if you haven't. It is surprisingly gruesome. I mean, even Diablo hasn't been this gruesome in forever. My jaw dropped. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 is being developed by Larian Studios, the developers of the critically acclaimed Divinity Original Sin 2. Larian has really been the shepherd of the classic RPG, the top-down, non-action RPG, bringing this genre into relevance in the modern age. So if there's a studio out there that I would trust to do a good job with Baldur's Gate 3, it would be Larian. Now, Larian founder Sven Vinke, I'm sorry for butchering the name, recently had interviews with Eurogamer and US Gamer. And from these interviews, we've learned that Baldur's Gate 3 will take place roughly 100 years in the future relative to the first games. It'll be steeped heavily in Dungeons & Dragons lore and be based on the 5th edition D&D rule set. It seems there will be multiplayer as well. And, quote, "We're going to have some things that you haven't seen yet in CRPGs, which I would love to talk about, but I'm going to hold it." Now, it doesn't seem clear yet whether the game will be turn-based like Divinity Original Sin 2, or real-time with pausing like the more classic Baldur's Gates. And I turn the question to you folks, what are your thoughts? Which would you rather? Now, Vinke said that Baldur's Gate 3 is the biggest game that his studio has ever done, and they had to triple the size of their studio in order to work on it. We even learned that work began on Baldur's Gate 3 before Divinity Original Sin 2 shipped back in September 2017. However, we don't yet know of any release date. What we do know, however, is that the newly announced Dungeons & Dragons campaign, Descent into Avernus, will directly precede the events of the Baldur's Gate 3 video game, and that this is not a coincidence. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of this. On to some Path of Exile news. By the time this video launches, the new League, Legion, will have launched. And with it, a massive patch, which effectively can be called the melee patch. Overall, we've seen some huge buffs to melee builds and some considerable nerfs to ranged builds. In essence, the meta is completely shaken up. We also see some massive quality of life changes, and we also see that magic and rare monsters have been buffed, which should make the early game a little bit more challenging. The Occultist has been heavily nerfed. Some would say that it's not even a viable choice for this new league. But something that is looking great is Flicker Strike. It's also looking like Cyclone Strike will be a solid option. The Slayer Ascendancy is looking great, with lots of viable paths to take within it. And we got a dev manifesto on the balance changes of this league. Link in the video description. Alright, on to some quick Destiny 2 news. Now, it seems in divorcing itself from Activision, Bungie has had to find a way to dissociate Destiny 2 from Activision Blizzard and the Battle.net launcher. And from leaks this week and then later confirmation, it appears that in September, Destiny 2 will be going free to play and migrating to Steam. Basically on September 17th, a major expansion, Shadowkeep, will be launching, and at that point the base game will go free to play and include all year one content, including foundational modes, activities, and rewards. The core game will be renamed to Destiny 2 New Light. And if you visit the official website, you'll see this notice. Destiny 2 is moving to Steam on September 17th. To get ready for that move, we will be enabling you to move your current characters, gear, and progress from Blizzard's Battle.net to Steam. And that takes us into some Blizzard news. A story broke this week that apparently several high-profile and experienced staff from Activision Blizzard will be leaving over the next 2 weeks. And the cited main reason appears to be morale issues. Now, it must be stressed that these positions appear to be in the eSports departments. And one of the major figures that appears to be leaving is the global product director of Blizzard eSports. And this comes right off the tail of news of the Overwatch League's commissioner leaving Blizzard for Epic Games. Now, according to Dexerto, sources internal to Blizzard have confirmed that the reason for the latest round of departures is because of low morale in the esports divisions of their games. According to one source, quote, "People are really getting tired of working for Pete Vlastelica." He's the CEO of Activision Blizzard's esports leagues. Quote, "The focus has become commercializing the esports titles instead of making good programs for the community. Many people internally are laying that on Pete, and it has crushed morale among the Call of Duty and Overwatch teams especially." Now, I've said it before over the years that it's clear that Blizzard had gone all in on esports, pumping an enormous amount of money into it. I mean, if you just look at all the promotion and all the building of teams and leagues and reward structures, there's an enormous amount of effort and money being devoted to this, and I don't believe that it's ever really turned a profit. Historically, esports was only really a big thing in South Korea, and over the past decade, there's been a growing scene in North America. And for years now, Blizzard has been pumping a lot of money into growing that scene and allowing it to establish itself as something legitimate, as something that will be accepted as part of pop culture almost. And that clearly puts a lot of pressure onto the esports divisions within Blizzard. Suddenly, the job of these esports divisions isn't just to provide quality esports entertainment and competition, it's to sell North America on the idea of esports. Now, in other Blizzard news that hits upon Diablo, StarCraft, and Overwatch, reputable games journalist Jason Schreier has released another article in which he has spoken to insiders at Blizzard and gotten some significant scoops. Now, it's thanks to Schreier that we currently know that Diablo 4 is in development and has been for some years now. What he's now confirmed this week is that a StarCraft first-person shooter game has been in development for the past 2 years. The project, which was codenamed Ares, was described as like Battlefield in the StarCraft universe, where you can play as a Marine and gun down Zerg aliens. There are also plans to experiment being able to play as Zerg. Now, right away, I get some serious Alien versus Predator vibes, where effectively, between human, Zerg, and Protoss, you have human, xenomorph, and predator. According to one insider, it seemed that development on this project was slow, but another said that it was looking quite good. And yet another person said that it came as a, quote, massive shock when Blizzard canceled the project a couple of weeks ago. Now, I love the StarCraft universe, so it's sad that a major StarCraft project like this has been canceled. Thankfully, we didn't have to feel the pain as badly as with StarCraft Ghost, which was much more public. And in fact, this is one of the reasons that Blizzard no longer says years in advance, hey, we're working on this, because it's normal in game development, especially among AAA publishers, to spin up a bunch of projects and they're not all going to be released. You're going to cancel more projects than you release, and that's how you want it to be if you only want to release quality products. If you just release any game you start working on, you're going to be releasing a bunch of garbage. And that doesn't mean that all the development time is wasted. Sometimes lore is brought into a different game. Sometimes concept art is carried over, art assets, sometimes game concepts. Overwatch was created from the ashes of Titan, an MMO. Sometimes it's even behind-the-scenes technologies, game engines. And it appears that Ares was originally being built on the Overwatch game engine. Now, the good news is that allegedly nobody was laid off as a result of this cancellation. And the reason they canceled it was so that they could move many of these developers onto Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2, both of which are expected to be Blizzard's marquee announcements at this year's BlizzCon, according to Jason Schreier. Both of these games are also said to be key parts of Blizzard's strategy in the years to come. Now, when we talk about Overwatch 2, it's unlikely that we're talking about literally Overwatch 2. According to Schreier, it will have a large PvE element, and apparently a couple of Blizzard people have compared it to Left 4 Dead. There's been a big demand for a separate story campaign mode, a PvE mode, in Overwatch, based off the success of the few PvE events introduced to the game. And according to Jeff Kaplan, the amount of effort required into developing a fully fledged story mode would basically be an entirely separate game. That there's only so far that they can push the current engine, the current design of Overwatch, that it's already been a monumental effort just to get PvE working in the game as it is. The reality is that the current Overwatch game engine is not designed for PvE, and they've been doing their best to make it work, but certainly an engine designed from the ground up to accommodate much more characters in the scene, much more advanced AIs, would do a better job of delivering a full PvE experience. Now, on June 5th, a former Blizzard employee named David Gibson stated, quote, "Well, today is my last day at Blizzard. Unfortunately, you'll never see what we made over the past 2 years." And while at first this seems to suggest that he's being let go because his project was cancelled, it's likely that he simply found a job elsewhere and is transferring of his own volition. And while we can assume that that project was the cancelled StarCraft FPS game, one thing to note is that Blizzard did not just cancel the StarCraft FPS game to move devs onto D4 and Overwatch. They also canceled an unannounced mobile project. So I'm sure it'll make some people happy to hear that Blizzard canceled a mobile project in order to move talent and allocate resources to Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2. Now, the person in charge of Project Ares was Dustin Browder, who was in charge of StarCraft 2 and Heroes of the Storm before moving on to Ares. So I do wonder, where is he going to go now? Because he's a man to follow. And in our last bit of news for the day here, the Hellfire expansion, the unofficial Diablo 1 expansion made out of house, is now available on GOG. And if you already own Diablo 1 on GOG, then you get the Hellfire expansion for free. And that is going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out last week's video, in which we attempt to figure out what the hell is Death Stranding. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, YouTube, and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on Patreon or YouTube and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.